Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here with us. If I could ask everybody to take the next couple minutes to silence your cell phones and please find a seat. We do have some open seats if you guys want to take a look out for that. I will also have some volunteers adding some seats in the back as we've had some great attendance this morning. Thank you all for joining. The Governor and First Lady will be here to join us shortly. The Governor may or may not take some questions from the media. We just ask if he does open it up for questions that we leave that time for our media in the back, not our guest attendees. But again, if you could just silence your cell phones, they will be with us shortly. For my press in the back, are we good? Can I get a thumbs up on audio, please? Perfect. Thank you, folks, and hopefully we'll start the program soon. Thanks.
historically, the church has made the world a better place for everyone. You can imagine in a city like Miami, there's great diversity, and there's also great need. One of the hardest challenges we face is being made aware of those needs.
They had really meaningful ways that they wanted to help, but they didn't know where to turn their resources. There wasn't any communication in trying to meet what they were doing with people who were in need of those services.
We have 20,000 faith institutions who every day wake up and want to serve, and I think it's our role to figure out a way to connect them with people who need to be served.
A lot of families get burned out by the system, and so they're used to just being a number or just being pushed off for that one need.
You call, you'd be on hold, you couldn't get through, and they said, we've got to change this. And so they started talking about the importance of real people, not just handing you off, but walking you through.
I think that was one of the First Lady's early desires. We've got to figure out a way to cut red tape. We've got to figure out a way to make this not as bureaucratic, and we've got to figure out a way to make it not complicated. And I think the way we did that was putting 110 educated people on state government in those communities. And then allowing faith and community organizations, of course, to supplement and say, well, if you ever come across this need, we're there for you.
It's not like an impersonal contracted government program. It's actually working with real people. Hope Navigators care about Floridians in need.
With the Hope Navigators, it really just brings it down to like a more human level.
They are working with those that are in need and then aligning our services and our resources to those families.
What is the role of government? What are we doing? Are we in place to put more money in front of a program with less accountability, not understanding at the end of the day, has it been really helping the people that ultimately we wanted to help? Or are we in a position to be able to corral the support of good people on the ground who have a mission to help good people in need?
So when they see a need, they call us and tell us, can you do this? Can you take a bed to a house? Can you take a mattress here? Can you feed this family?
We're helping more children this year than we ever have before. It's because of our partnership, and we want to see other nonprofits get engaged, and we want to engage with those nonprofits together as well.
You don't have moments like this often, where you have the government, big G, saying, we want to partner with you, the big C, to come together to meet needs in our community. And they're just not talking about it like it's happening, I'm seeing it. And so now we're at a moment in our state's history where not only are we aware of the needs and the voices that are crying out, but we have the means by which to meet them more effectively than we ever have before.
Once our faith institutions and community organizations know that these vulnerable people exist, when a human sees another human in need, right, they don't forget, it sticks with them. And so what we're going to create is something that won't matter in the long run who's in this administration, who's living in the governor's mansion. This will be something that is deeply built into the core of our state, something that is changing lives for decades to come.
And I think in the state of Florida, we are showing the nation how we can change lives for the better by reducing the size and scope of government and getting people from the faith-based community, the nonprofits, and the private sector all involved to help good people in need.
Morning. Oh, please sit down. Thanks so much. Great to be back in Tampa. Of course, I have the First Lady with us, which is always a treat. We have Eric Dellen back, who's our liaison for faith and community, our Secretary of Department of Children and Families, Siobhan Harris. Then we have a lot of our top Care Portal churches with Hope Florida from around the state. We also have Senator Jay Collins from here in Hillsborough County, Representatives Gonzalez Pittman, Jacques, Holcomb, and Alvarez. I want to thank them for coming. And today is the start of our back-to-school sales tax holiday. So all the parents, you got 2 weeks. to do. I mean, I just remembered our kids getting out of school for the summer, and now they're getting ready to go back. But we are proud to have done that again, so that's some time for parents to be able to get what you need, and pretty much everything in some form you get a break on. So kudos to the legislature for answering our call to include that again. And we are also on the heels of being ranked #1 economy in the nation of all 50 states 2 years in a row by CNBC. #1 in education by U.S. News and World Report 2 years in a row nationwide. #1 for parental involvement in education and education freedom. 50-year low in the crime rate. And we are #1 in net in-migration every year since I've been governor. We also have, since I took office, of all the debt the state had accumulated from the 1840s to the present, we've paid off 36% of it, and we're doing more every day. And I just think it's interesting because the U.S. debt just hit $35 trillion. So every U.S. citizen share of that national debt, I think, is close to $104,000 per U.S. citizen. Florida has the lowest per capita debt of any state in the country. So as a Floridian, your share of Florida's debt isn't $104,000. It's about $600 and declining every day. So that's a great example of good stewardship and good success, and we're proud to do that. We're going to continue to build off that. Now, so we've done a lot, but there's certain things government can do. For example, if the legislature spends a little bit more, I can take the veto pen and veto the spending and reduce the debt. That's solely within government's power to be able to do that. Giving education choice, that's something within our power. You as a parent in Florida, you have the right to choose the school that best fits the needs of your child and your family. And if that's a private, the money follows you to private. If it's charter, you choose charter. If you're in your school district, a lot of times you have choices there too. We could make that happen through legislation. We could make it happen by making sure the funding is there. Some of the things we've done for environmental stewardship, restoring Florida's Everglades, doing things to help with water. We put the policy in place. We put the resources behind it. Highways and roads. We have massive infrastructure going on to accelerate projects that weren't even supposed to begin until next decade, and we're happy to do that. So those things are good. But those are things that if you just have kind of the will, the leadership, you can do it. You can bring it in for a landing. Some of the things about helping people that may not be as fortunate, that is unfortunately not so simple, because we've had throughout the last many, many decades in this country, we've had legislation passed. We've had trillions of dollars of tax money go to alleviate, eradicate poverty, and it never happened. And in many respects, it may have created problems that were equally as bad. And so how do you deal with that? If we could just sign legislation and everything went, we would do it, but we know that that's not the way. We know government, some of the issues that we deal with in our communities and that individuals have to deal with, that moms have to deal with, you name it, are not just simply you can sign a piece of legislation, the problem goes away. And so Hope Florida really recognizes that. It recognizes that government has an important role, but that government ultimately is not going to be the one to solve these problems, because if they could have solved them, they'd have solved them by now. So we really believed under the First Lady's leadership that we could use our role in state government to facilitate support for people who need it within their own communities. And part of that is the faith community and mobilizing churches. Part of that's the business community and making sure our businesses know that they can make a real difference. Some of that is nonprofit groups, even individual volunteers. You name it, someone goes in and they need help and they're going into a government bureau. If you put them into this, what we've created, this care portal, now all of a sudden the needs go out to all these different stakeholders. So a church down the street may know that a mom got evicted from her apartment, needs a place to stay, has 2 young kids. They're going to be there, they're going to help, and they're going to have a solution that's likely going to be sustainable and is going to get that individual in a situation where they're going to be able to be self-sufficient. And so we've seen that over and over again in what was happening throughout this program about how we now have a lot of metrics for success. So we've had a lot of support on this. We're here in part to recognize that. Private sector, for example, has done a lot. You've had Walmart, Simply Health, AT&T, Tico, Humana. They're here today. They've supported the Hope Florida Fund, which is the 501c3 arm of Hope Florida. So not your tax dollars going to help these folks, but private contributions. We have nearly 5,000 nonprofits and charity organizations that are signed up as part of the Hope Florida network and that are used by our Hope Navigators. So instead of having, just somebody that's like a bureaucrat, we now transform that into a navigator where their role is really to navigate the person coming in through all the possibilities and to link them with the groups or the institutions that can help best meet their needs. We also have almost 2,000 Florida faith institutions that are part of the care portal. And, that's very good. We want to do more, but that's something that's very, very good. So this is a different model into how you deal with some of these problems. And so what are the results? So this is something that's a couple years old. We've had nearly 100,000 Floridians that have been connected to Hope Florida, and almost 30,000 participants have either reduced or eliminated entirely their reliance on public assistance. More than 60% of Hope Florida participants in need of a job found a job. 77% of former foster youth that received assistance have received assistance with accessing independent living services, and almost 70% of participants with barriers related to basic needs had those needs met. And so not only is this good for those folks, it's also good for the taxpayers. We anticipate a savings of almost $100 million annually. So, over a 10-year period, you're looking at, $800–900 million, close to $1 billion that's being saved. And the result is better than if you would have spent that money with government. Imagine that. So we are proud to have created a model where we can best harness the resources in society. Today, we are proud to be here with 13 top need-meeting care portal churches from across the state who've delivered beds, meals, clothes, and met other urgent needs that our Hope Navigators have identified. We're grateful for their incredible work every day. Their dedication and service has been inspiring. And we told folks we wanted them to come to be recognized so that we could thank them publicly, share some of the results of Hope Florida. But what we didn't say is that we are here, and thanks to the Hope Florida Fund, all of those churches that are here are going to get financial checks, going to get rewards today for their good work. So we're going to hand out those checks in a minute. But before we do that, I'm going to turn it over to the First Lady, and then I will announce the recipient, and she will present you with the check.
He didn't get into the amounts, though. We'll get to that because I think a lot of you will be happy to see what you've received, and it's all because of your hard work. We have the 13 churches from across the state who have done wonderful things on behalf of good people in need all across the state. So it's just a small way for us to be able to say thank you. That power of the care portal, I can't even begin to tell you just how of a seismic shift it's making all across the state. I had a chance to go out on a care portal delivery in Quincy. There was a mom who had a daughter. Her daughter had unique abilities. Unfortunately, she had been hit by a car at one point in time and had a learning disability. She had to go about things a little bit differently, but was doing very well. but they were coming up on some hard times financially. They didn't have a car, didn't have transportation. They were having a hard time putting food on the table. She wanted her daughter to be able to get a good education so that she could have the American dream. All of the things that you want for your family, she wanted too, but she needed a little extra help. And so we saw those needs come across the care portal. And I had the privilege with Eric Dellenbeck, who will come up here in a second and talk a little bit about it, and also with our agency secretaries and the help of City Church in Tallahassee, to go collect groceries, load them up, put them in the back of the car, drive down to their house, knock on the front door, and deliver all of this essentially love to this mom and daughter who just needed help, and they didn't know where to turn. They didn't know what to do. And that's the beauty of Hope Florida. It's one phone call. No matter what you need, your needs will be met, and you'll be able to talk to a human, right, who can help guide you. I mean, today in society, everything's become so technological, right, where you're trying to figure out everything on Google and DuckDuckGo. Imagine if you're a single mom and you're having a hard time keeping the lights on, but having a hard time trying to figure out which nonprofit does this and which faith-based institution can help me with this need, and how do I figure out if there's a government program like rapid credentialing and vocational and technical education and all of these wonderful things that the governor has made a priority. How do I put all of this together? Well, in comes Hope Florida with one phone call, and then you get paired up with a navigator, and that navigator then takes on the burden of whatever the other person on the line is feeling. So if it's that mom and I don't know how to feed my child, then that navigator figures it out. And then we show up, you show up at their front door with groceries. And the amazing thing is, it's always been there. It's always there. You've always had the faith-based community. That's their mission, to do God's work. They want to do that. But they didn't know that single mom was there. They'd give anything to know if that single mom was there. But uniquely, government is positioned for that single mom to come in to ask for help. Prior to this governor being elected, they would have had maybe, of course, TANF payments or SNAP benefits or whatever they needed to get back on their feet. But that would be the end of the story. But under his leadership, now you've made a connection to the community. The community is going to wrap their arms around, in this case, a single mom. They're not just going to show up once with groceries. They're going to come back as long as that mom needs help and going to ensure that she and her daughter are okay. Same with the private sector. They can fulfill with the care portal now. An individual can go to hopeflorida.com if they want to be a part of the solution and they want to help out. So all of this is happening, but that's just really step one, right? So now with the Hope Florida Network, and he had referenced it, people transitioning off of government assistance, we're helping people live up to their God-given potential by showing them all that's possible, whether it's the private sector support, let's say like a Publix, who makes it possible to hire people with unique abilities. Or maybe they hire that single mom from 9 to 3 instead of 9 to 5 so she can pick up her kids from school and make it just a little bit easier. You bring in the private sector. You use a lot of what the governor's been doing with CareerSource, the Department of Commerce, all of these opportunities, but you've got that navigator who's there all along the way to make sure that her needs or whomever's needs are met. And an amazing thing has happened about this too. When I had met some of these navigators early on, they had told me that they had felt helpless prior to the governor coming in and really launching this whole initiative. And that when they were talking to somebody on the other end of the phone and they were applying for benefits, they wanted to do more, but they didn't have an avenue to do it. They wanted to make a difference. And so it was demoralizing a lot of times for them. But now we have empowered them to be able to make a difference. They're going to go the extra mile because they have a vested interest in seeing these people succeed. They become almost a part of their family. We went over and surprised a lot of the navigators with $1,000 bonuses because they're working overtime to make sure that the people that they're helping are successful. That's the other thing. The other thing is the faith-based community. It empowers them now to know that they can go out and do more. That care portal, we're just getting warmed up. I mean, we need you to do more on there. And then for somebody in need, think about that mom that I talked to you about who didn't know where to turn. She didn't have a car. She didn't have transportation. She didn't have any food to put on the table. Now she sees that her community is there to help her. And imagine what that must feel like, to have people show up at your front doorstep with a plate of lasagna to say, hey, I heard you needed some help. And that's what it's, and you know what? That's just government making a connection and then getting out of the way, right? And really incentivizing and empowering people, again, who have always been there, who wanted to help, but we needed to get folks together on the same level, and then we needed to move and exit stage left. So it's been an honor and a privilege. And, you know, the number that the governor invoked when he talked about, 30,000 people transitioning off of government assistance, and that extrapolates to $900 million over the course of 10 years, that's one agency, one statistic. If you look at the preventative measures that we're doing, trying to put a number to that, so think about it. Now when our CPIs are going out and they're investigating suspected child abuse or neglect, and maybe they don't see cause to take a child from the home, but they see that somebody needs some help, there's something there. Now Hope Florida is an avenue to be able to help these folks. We just did a big thing with the sheriffs, and we talked to them and police officers across the state. We said, hey, when you go out on a call and you see something that might not warrant criminal charges, but you know they need help, hey, this is where Hope Florida comes in. And so now you are preventing people from getting into the government system. Government waits until there's a problem and then they react, right? And then the outcomes aren't as good and you're spending a lot more money. Now let's help folks upstream. Let's try to get in front of the problem. Let's try to embrace the community to do that. And so it's been a big privilege and an honor to really, for this guy, because if you've noticed one thing about him, he solves problems and he thinks differently about doing it. And we both deeply care about the well-being of the people of this state. And both of us, I don't want to see anyone suffer. It hurts my soul. And if there is something that we can do to alleviate their suffering by bringing the community together, man, we'll do it every day of the week and twice on Sunday. So we're honored and we're privileged to be able to have this opportunity and to surprise some really great churches for what they've done to help folks across the state. So thank you.
All right, so the check. So we're going to start with a presentation of checks. So we've got $25,000 for the following churches. And so first, River Life Church. Want to come up and take it? And you guys just do the pictures. I'll do over here. All right. Next is Oasis Church, $25,000. All right. Radiant Church, $25,000. South Shore Community Church, $25,000. Grace Bible Church of Sebring, $25,000. And then another $25,000 for Idlewild Baptist Church. $25,000 for North River Church. Action Church, $25,000. Bayside Community Church, North River Campus, $25,000. All right, University Carry On United Methodist Church. $25,000 for Calvary Chapel of Fort Lauderdale. And we also have, we've got two churches that have really carried a huge load in terms of helping out a lot of Floridians. And so I'm pleased to announce these two for a $50,000 award each. So first, Spanish River Church, $50,000. And another $50,000 for Grace Family Church. All right. Well done. Thanks so much. We appreciate it. All right, next we'll hear from our DCF Secretary, Siobhan Harris.
Thank you, Governor DeSantis and First Lady DeSantis. What an amazing morning, right? You know, I really appreciate the governor and the First Lady bringing us all together to celebrate these incredible churches who personify what it means to be the hands and feet of the Lord. Faith institutions have always been an integral part of society's ability to help those in need, but bureaucratic red tape and silos have made it difficult for them to truly maximize their potential in solving for some of these needs. That's what makes Hope Florida so different. Through partnerships with organizations like Care Portal, it's never been easier for faith institutions and government to collaborate. And moreover, it's made it easier for churches to pool their resources to help a family, particularly those with more complex needs. For obvious reasons, this has been a game changer at DCF. I've been the secretary now for 3.5 years, and I can tell you, I say it all the time, it's transforming the way we engage with families. We are showing up differently. Our approach is not transactional, it is transformative. Thousands of churches are helping to prevent families from falling into deeper end crisis and unlocking a network of supports for these families that goes far beyond the tangible help that comes in the form of food, bedding, or other goods. In many instances, the support offered by faith institutions provides just enough relief for that family to take a breath, restore hope, and make it through the next steps of their journey. To illustrate this point, I want to share a success story with you. A father contacted us for help. He, his wife, and 6 children were homeless and living temporarily on the streets and in hotels when possible. Both parents were unemployed, and the dad had recently quit his job from a delivery company due to transportation issues. The Hope Navigator made a referral for help through Care Portal, and Church of Hope responded by funding a 3-week stay in a hotel. During that time, the father obtained employment at a local gas station. With employment taken care of, it was now time to find stable housing. The Hope Navigator submitted a referral to another community organization, and after a few weeks of searching, the parents were able to sign a lease for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath apartment. The nonprofit provided $5,000 in financial support to cover the first couple months of rent and the deposit. The support offered by the church helped that family jumpstart and get the help needed to put those puzzle pieces back together. That's what this program is all about, helping people navigate the services needed to get back on their feet. This would not be possible without the continued support and passion of the First Lady. She's been involved every step of the way, supporting elements that are critical for the outcomes that we've achieved that you heard the governor mention, traveling to communities to bring awareness to the program, personally delivering checks to support local organizations doing good work, and most importantly, to encourage and offer support. There are countless stories like the one I just shared, and our partners here today are making that magic happen. Thank you for all that you do in helping to ensure Florida's families thrive. Thank you all.
Good morning. As was mentioned earlier, my name's Eric Dellenbach, and I have had the honor of serving for the past 5 years as the governor's liaison for faith and community here in the state of Florida. Anytime I mention that title, I think it's probably relevant to say, what do you do? And that's a really simple answer. I get the honor of being this man's voice and this incredible lady's voice to the 20,000 faith institutions of Florida, the 110,000 nonprofits of Florida, and their voice back into the executive office of the governor. If you did the math on me being in place for 5 years, that means that from day one of the governor's administration, faith and community became a priority. To give you a scope of how big of a priority, there's only 14 states in the whole country that have an emphasis on faith and community at the executive office, at the state level. We were the only state for 4 years that had a position in the executive office of the governor. I believe, yeah. I believe if you looked at what's happening in our country right now in faith and community, combined with what I'm going to talk about, I believe to be a simple yet profound thing that's happening with Hope Florida, it is no doubt to me that we are the most friendly faith and community state in the country. As I share with you today, there's 3 things I want to share. I hope you have taken in that this is an unprecedented day. Like, I hope as you look around and the fellowship that's happening and the checks being handed out and the incredible momentum that these 2 people have put on work that's being done by the faith institutions, I hope you can soak in that for a moment. What I would say, there's 3 truths I need you to know before I end my time today. First, we recognize that faith and community organizations have been standing on the front lines for history. This is not new. Them caring for faith for our vulnerable citizens is not new. Secondly, we believe that hope doesn't come from a greater, grander government. Hope comes from faith and community organizations, private businesses, and individuals of their state serving our most vulnerable. We believe that is God's plan A. Number 3, we in our state do not have a resource problem. I know that many of you as faith people in this room would say, well, we know we don't have a resource problem with God. He's got cattle on 1,000 hills. We talk about that all the time. But I think sometimes we forget that we don't have a resource problem in our communities either. There are people every day that wake up with a heart. In fact, there's preachers and pastors speaking all over the state all the time saying, hey, here's how we serve. Here's who we need to serve. The heart is there, and the need is there. And yet oftentimes we do not make that connection. I believe we don't have a resource issue. We have a connectivity issue that is being solved by what's happening with Hope Florida. I am so passionate about it, it's hard to explain. I'm glad I'm standing. Sometimes they make me do this sitting. I can't do it sitting. Because what's happening is you need to realize our country was built on the idea that nobody could serve their communities better than those communities. And this, as I said, is God's plan A. And sometimes you've heard the First Lady say, I love that she said it again today, one of the great roles of government, I think you've said this for 5 straight years, is literally to make connections. Sometimes, I know when you say government, your walls go up. That's what happens in faith world, right? But let me tell you what matters, is that sitting here right now, the Secretary's agency knows every name, every address, every story of every child in foster care. Every one of them. Which means that as you, as a faith institution, where your heart beats for those children, the reason there has to be a connection, the reason this is simple but profound, is because those connections being made at a need level for people whose heart beats with resource is absolutely incredible. In my life, I've become familiar with a phrase that has kind of changed my life. It's the phrase, you cannot unsee what you've seen. I suspected in a room of this size, knowing I'm filled with faith people, that you would say, that's my life. I saw something that I could not ever unsee. I heard something I couldn't unhear. I experienced something I couldn't not experience. And friends, that's the magic of Hope Florida, in my opinion. Because when those moments happen, it changes the trajectories of our life. If we're totally real with each other, sometimes we'd probably like to go back and not see that thing because of how much it changes the trajectory of our life. But this is the magic that is happening with Hope Florida. And I want to leave you with a statistic that I think encourages me the most. When our faith and community organizations go out, they get a call from Hope Florida puts a need in, and they go to that house. We're told that 80% of the times that person in need never enters a second need. Well, let me tell you, friends, if you've not been in that world, that's not because they don't have more needs. The reason is because when that person of our faith and community organization stands at the doorway of that other human, there is a connection made where they become a church family, not a government family. This is the most beautiful thing, in my opinion, that is happening. And today we want to honor you. We want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for the incredible work you're doing in serving your communities. God bless you.
Well, thanks everyone that's been involved, and we, of course, are signing up more people every day, more churches, more businesses, and there's a proven track record now of success. So I think that this is something that that should generate a lot of excitement, and we're happy to be able to make these awards to recognize really good work, and it's work that's been very, very meaningful. Also, just wanted to say, we saw a, quote, election take place in Venezuela, and it was this idea that Biden-Harris had that you come in and you relax pressure and sanctions on the Maduro regime, that somehow that regime would respond by supporting a free and fair election. Well, that crashed and burned, that theory. It should never have been tried. The way you deal with somebody like Maduro is you tighten the pressure. You make sure to choke off their resources. But what happened was a total sham. There's a lot of people that went out, that wanted their voice heard, that want to see a new direction for Venezuela. And that didn't happen because you have a corrupt regime. And this is a corrupt regime that's been empowered by Biden and Harris, and their policy there, like so many other places in the world, has failed. But also just like to make a statement about supposedly now, you know, Biden's got all these new ideas he's trying to come up with, and one of them is he's really going after the Supreme Court. And one of the things that he's proposed is term limits for the justices of the Supreme Court. And my response to that is, why aren't we doing term limits for members of Congress? That's what would make the biggest difference. Come on. All right, we got anybody back there? Any questions?
Governor, you actually, the Supreme Court. In Florida, we have a mandatory retirement age for justices. Would you like to see that in Washington federal level?
So here's the thing, like, honestly, on the 18-year term limit for justice, so founders, I mean, if you go back and read the founders, they said you're going to serve during good behavior, which basically meant lifetime appointment unless you did something to get you impeached and removed from office. And they thought that that was important because they wanted the judiciary to be insulated from the passions of the day, that enforcing the Constitution when it's popular to do so is not that big of a deal. You just follow the wind. It's tough when enforcing the Constitution cuts against the currents of public opinion. And so they wanted to insulate them from having to even worry about it. So something like a retention election would not make sense as the founders understood it. Florida's Constitution is not really, the people that framed that were not necessarily in sync with our founding fathers when they did the U.S. Constitution. So the whole idea of retention election is undercuts what the founders wanted to do on that. Age limits, if you're going to do it for everybody in office. If you want to do 75, don't just apply it to justices. Apply it to Congress, apply it to the executive. If you're going to do that, that would be one thing. But I don't see how you could say, so an 18-year limit, you'd serve for 18 years, you'd have a fixed term, you wouldn't stand for retention or anything like that. Honestly, like, I don't know that that really, I mean, they don't like the court now because they're on the wrong side of rulings. What happens, I think, when these things happen is you think you're doing it because you think it'll help generate more liberal jurisprudence, and in reality, a lot of times it backfires. It may end up, if you had 18 years, that it would force liberals off the bench, and then maybe a Republican would be able to replace it. So you just don't know how that's going to shake out. But I would be willing, if they're willing to support term limits for members of Congress, that would be a trade that I would make. Because I think if you look at what's gone on, you have so many people that have been there for decades, and what has happened with the debt over those decades. You know, at the turn of the century, our debt was like $5.5 trillion. Now it's $35 trillion 24 years later. That is a failure. That is a failure of leadership, and I think it's because, in part, those folks get there, and the main thing they try to do is stay there for as long as possible, instead of saying you have a limited amount of time to make a difference, lead, get things done, then go back and live under the laws you pass. And incidentally, and I'm not saying this is the only reason, in Florida, we have term limits for our legislature. We also have a balanced budget requirement. But notice, we're the one state, with a massive surplus, tax cuts, and AAA credit rating and paying down debt that we've accumulated over 100 and some years of Florida history. And part of it, I think, is because you have term limits for the legislature. So term limits for members of Congress, a balanced budget amendment for the Constitution, and the legislature, they certified both of those for Article 5 convention and they certified Congress shall make no law respecting the citizens of the United States that does not also apply to members of Congress themselves. And if you did that, they wouldn't be able to exempt themselves from any laws. So those three reforms, I think, would make a difference. I don't think the stuff in the Supreme Court, an 18-year limit, would ultimately make a positive difference. But I would be willing to trade that for term limits for members of Congress. But I wouldn't support it just in a vacuum.
Governor, do you acknowledge that the presidential race has a new energy to it now that Biden is out and Harris is no longer taking?
So what I will acknowledge is that you have a major attempt to manufacture excitement and hoopla around Kamala. That is clear. They are working very hard to do that. That was predicted, and I said this before Biden dropped. I said they are trying to get him out. The minute he's out, whoever is there, you're going to have a massive media campaign, hundreds of millions of dollars worth, to try to provide glowing coverage with that. So that dynamic has clearly changed. But the reason why they were after Biden so much wasn't because they didn't like Biden and they liked Trump. It was because they thought Biden was going to lose. So they were totally fine with letting him be in the basement in 2020 because they thought he was going to win. They were totally fine with hiding the fact that he wasn't up to the job over the last 3.5 years because they thought they could get him across the finish line one more time. It was only on that debate when you had 90 minutes, that was very painful to watch, when it was obvious that wasn't going to fly. So that's when you had this campaign, and then you did it. Now, it's interesting, Obama initially did not endorse Kamala because I think he knows that she doesn't have what it takes. And so he didn't do it. Everyone else kind of rushed to do it. I think he thought that there was going to actually be some competition here. And so they've done this. She's raised a boatload of money. She's getting the media, all this stuff. The problem is you got 100 days left. I think that's enough time for people to kind of peel back on the onion and see, okay, what are we really dealing with here? Is this somebody that we would really want as president? Or is this just a San Francisco Democrat that basically spouts all kinds of non sequiturs and nothings about, the passage of time and all these things that make no sense to anybody? We'll see, right? We have every right as a state to provide protections for employees and businesses to say if they are doing woke training, which is basically discriminating against folks on the basis of race, you have right to opt out of that. It's not a question of what the company can say. They can say whatever they want. But you have a right to not have to self-flagellate. You have a right to not have to sit there and listen to that nonsense. And so we were right on that. We're also right in being able to say that the woke agenda is not consistent with what we want in education standards at our taxpayer-funded universities. We have every right to set standards. We have every right to say, here's what we want to do. Here's some of the things that we're not going to do with your tax dollars. But as all these things go, we typically go, I can't count on my hands the number of times they've run in, got a judge to do that, and then we end up winning on appeal. Remember, the one case which I acknowledge was the closest was on the internet censorship, social media censorship. We did this a couple years ago. We did protections for Floridians. They can't discriminate against you and kick you off or censor you just because you're saying things that the big tech companies don't like. You know, they don't want conservative speech as much as they want liberal speech, particularly now that we're in an election cycle. So we just provided protections. We said you can have standards and rules about what you're going to do, but you got to apply it evenly. And if you're applying it with a thumb on the scale against one part, certain viewpoints, then people have a right to be able to have some protection. And, you know, we lost in district court, lost appeal. U.S. Supreme Court has kicked that back now to the district court. And we'll see what happens. I mean, it's probably going to go on and on. The whole gender surgeries for minors, we said not going to fly in Florida. We're not going to allow that to happen. There's a lot of people making a lot of money off this. And you take some teenager and you cut off private parts, and then they get into their 20s and they can't reverse it. And it becomes a big, big problem, and it's not based in science, it's based in ideology. And so the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals has already said that states have a right to do this. And even in face of that, we had a judge strike Florida's down. We're going to win that on appeal for sure, because the circuit's already ruled on that, and we'll be better off. And many countries are now backtracking off of that because it is motivated by ideology, and it's motivated by a lust for profit and a lust for financial gain, because there's people that make a whole lot of money based off this, and it's really been detrimental to so many people. So all these things kind of work out, but the end of the day, we have every right as a state to say that of all the different things you have when you go to work, that you can't be forced to sit there and have to listen to this dribble. You can opt out. They can do it. They can say it. Nothing's being restricted there, but you're right to say, not for me. That should be protected. Same thing with our educational institutions. We have a right to focus on things that are meaningful. We have a right to pursue truth, and we have a right to have standards that say that accordingly. And so, and I think if you look, Columbia University, you look at some of these agencies that we have in government, you look at corporations, some of them, once they get infected and captured by the woke mind virus, the institutions just crumble, and they become hollow shells of what they were supposed to be. And what we're doing when we say where woke goes to die, it's because we don't want our institutions to be infected with woke ideology. We want our institutions to be rooted in truth. We want our institutions to be rooted in what's right. And as long as you're doing that and you're strong on that, you have a chance to do very well. The minute you go into these other things, where all of a sudden people get elected district attorney and they release criminals or they refuse to prosecute criminals, crime goes up. Well, actually, the crime statistics don't go up, because what they start doing, they stop reporting crimes. So they say, oh, this crime is down in all these cities that everyone's scared to walk down the street in. No, it's not that crime is down. It's that the reporting is down, because, first of all, if you get mugged in some of these places, it's not even worth reporting it. There's never going to prosecute somebody for that. There's also the agencies don't want to take in the stuff. So it's not that people are actually safer in those places, but that's a great example. Well, how destructive has that been, with Soros pouring in money to these district attorneys' races, and then all of a sudden the criminals are able to rule the roost in some of our previously greatest cities in this country. It just doesn't work. All the universities, Columbia University, you see some of the nonsense that goes on there. That doesn't fly in Florida, I can tell you that. You want to try to take over, you want to try to commandeer parts of our university, you're going to be ejected from the premises immediately. We're just not going to put up with it. We're not going to let the inmates run the asylum. But part of the reason that's happened in those places is because it's all about ideology. And this is what's happened. So I think that you need to have a solid foundation for everything you do. And if you're just indulging in the latest ideological fad, you just can't succeed over the short, medium, or long term in that respect. And look, some of it is it's a reflection of the times we live in. I look at this Olympics opening ceremony, and honestly, I wasn't necessarily, I don't get offended. People say things that I disagree with all the time, but I was just sad seeing this. It's like, that was really a symbol of the decline of Western civilization. I don't think on the closing ceremony they're going to do anything where they mock Islam. I don't think that's going to happen. I'd be willing to bet a lot of money that doesn't happen. And so when they're doing that, and they're mocking the Last Supper like that, it just shows that so much of, particularly Western Europe, they've really walked away from the values that once made those countries great. And so we're in that battle here in the United States and have been for many, many years about are we going to be rooted in truth? Are we going to be rooted in things that have real serious meaning? And, of all the things that you can say is we've put our stake in the ground here in Florida very strong, and people have responded by us being the top destination for people to want to move to. So there you go. Thanks.